Okay, I think we're going. I think we're live. What's up, dude? How are you?
Awesome. Dude, I'm great. I am great. Just scrambled over to my local coffee shop, grabbed a little bit of a coffee because I didn't want to brew an espresso. I got lazy and I was out. So
What do you brew at home? What do you have, like one of those I have like the Breville Touch. You have one of those? Yeah.
Same one. Yeah. My wife got it for me for a few years back for Christmas and I love it. And then of course Paper Street coffee going in there.
Of course. I do the Americano in the morning and then the double shot of espresso over ice in the afternoon when I inevitably have to go back in the gym and coach again. So.
Yeah, that midday coffee to just give you that extra push to get in the gym.
I think it's mental. I think it's mental for me. I think I just need to smell it and like taste it. I don't even know if the caffeine does anything, but it's like, okay, I can go again. It's like someone telling me that I'm allowed to go again and not. So
I completely agree with that.
All right, guys, what's up, everybody? Another episode of Talking Ship. We have our fantastic guest on, Matt Souza. We're going to take today just to look at some old Glassman clips. I've been doing game stuff recently just because that's been like the topic of everybody's conversation, quarterfinals and just the season in general. So that's like my low-hanging fruit for the show. It's so easy for me to jump on and watch old games events with everybody in the chat and people just get rowdy over it. So it's like the easiest thing when I need to do a stream, but sometimes I like to provide more context to people so they can get into the past. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So you've been one of my favorite episodes you did. I think Savan couldn't make the show or something. This is probably 2-3 months ago. You did your maybe first solo show with Greg, or you and Caleb might have done it. Yeah. And you got to dig into some stuff that it seems like Greg's not super interested in talking about, some of the old methodology stuff, because he's so focused on the broken science stuff these days, which is understandable. But what did you like? How was your experience getting like your one-on-one interview with him?
Oh, it was awesome. And I was super glad everybody enjoyed it. I remember I was coming home from traveling and I was on the freeway driving back and Savan's like, hey, some stuff came up. Like, I can't do the show tomorrow. Are you able to do it? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, wait, we have Greg. And he goes, yeah, do you want to keep him? And my instant reaction was like, no, like, go ahead and let him know it's just me. And like, I don't want to do that. And then I thought about it and he's like, okay, no problem. I'll give Greg a call. And so I was thinking about it on the rest of the drive home. And I was like, you know what would be really cool is just to learn the like origin story of like the L1, like back when he was just riding the bike to the gym, writing the articles, like how did it come together? Like everybody loves a great origin story, right? And so I called Sevan back and I was like, hey, I got this idea. Run it by Greg. I want you to run it by Greg so he could say no without making me like feel bad or anything. Right. And so he called me back comments later. He's like, dude, Greg's super into it. And I was surprised because like you said, he's been really focused on all his broken science stuff and just enjoying his time with his family. Really, he just seems super stoked, super happy on life right now and what he's doing. And he's like, Greg's into it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And I coached a class that morning and it was probably the least present class I've coached since I found out years ago that the building that I was currently in was being sold and we had only a short window to get out. So I remember that phone call that day. I'm like, good job on your squats. And they're like, we're doing pull-ups. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm in the room, but just mine somewhere else.
Oh, dude, I've had days like that. One story that sticks out at me from that, and I mean, this is the least important part of that entire show, but he told a story about someone who used to train back in the day, and they set like all the pins on the machines halfway through and sent somebody through like every single like of the Global Gym style machines. Yep. He went all the way through and back and then sprinted out and went to the hospital or something after like experiencing intensity on a machine. I happen to work, well, one of my gyms, my newest gyms, has a whole like lane of Global Gym machines because it's like a hybrid gym in the middle of the North Shore in Hawaii where there's nothing else. I'm totally going to set the pin in the middle and rip through every exercise on one of those machines like that story and see what happens. It's like stuck with me. It's such a funny story.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, let's dive into some old Greg stuff and chat about it because I have like 5 2-minute clips, but knowing both you and I, we could take a 2-minute clip and turn it into a 40-minute conversation. So we'll see where this goes. There's no rules on this today. We're just going to see where it goes.
Sounds good.
All right, let's see what I can find first. All right, I like this one just because of the current conversations.
The heavy event of last year that knocked out Chris Spiel, seemed to Spieler. Sorry, needs a friend. That knocked him out. Caused everyone to think heavy, and we kind of laughed at the regional qualifiers where everyone was anticipating so heavy, and through this nasty run in, based on the reaction to last year's desire for more endurance kind of stuff. But I thought they were spectacularly well run, and it was very meaningful to me that most of the U.S. regional quals were larger than last year's games. That's huge. We had our guesstimate is around 4,500 people at the games this year.
All right, before we get into the real point of this video, I think that's interesting that he says that like the weight's not important or going heavy is not important, because that's something Dave reiterates every time he's talking about programming in his week in review or on podcasts or whatever. People always expect the games to progress in a heavier load fashion when it doesn't have to be that way. It can just be like a capacity fashion. And that's obviously something that Greg instilled in Dave way back in the day, and Dave has carried that through in his programming. Agree or disagree?
I completely agree. Yep. And I think it just comes back to the pyramid, right?
That's true. That's an excellent point. All right. This is the real juice.
1,300 last year.
Have you seen this before?
No.
I have not.
All right.
And I was perfectly 100% delighted with the regional qualifications. And we're going to have a section, which was bigger, section or region? Sections, small sectional quals feeding to regionals, feeding to the games next year. So it continues. I'm going to cap the venue attendance about where it's at. I could probably get 50,000 people to aggregate in another year or two. I don't want to be in that business. What I'd like to do is cap the number, put the effort into regional and sectional qualification globally, and winnow that pool down to 75 females and 75 males or fewer that are of extraordinary capacity. And
I don't want to be in that business. Listen to that. 2000. So this is 2009. This or 2009, 2010. After the 2009 games, he saw the direction it was going. He knew. I got to imagine, not that he is the type to cave to any kind of pressure, but Dave is probably very excited at this point, chomping at the bit, seeing his flower blossom essentially. And Greg's like, whoa, this is not what we're doing here. Like, I can see where this will go if I let it go in that direction. And so we're going to try to put some parameters on it and keep it small. And I'm sure Dave's like, no, we can do this. We can go to Carson, California and rent out a giant stadium. And so I can only imagine the conversations that took place just from seeing this little clip here.
And it's interesting because 2010 was the first year at StubHub, wasn't
it? Yes,
yeah,
it was.
So it's like Greg makes this statement, and then it does end up growing crazy. I've like, when you asked if I've never seen this before, and then he dropped that, I was like, oh shit. And I think who was it? Augustus put in the comment like Greg never cared about the games, and this is definitely foreshadowing that. And also too, I'd like to mention that like as he's giving this talk, I can't tell if the writing on the board behind him is just specific to what Greg is talking about right now, or what the conversation was before, or if he's at an L1, because sometimes he would just drop into those L1s and give little nuggets.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was from an L1, or it looks like that someone has been writing the L1 on the board, but I don't know what this video clip came from.
Yeah. And so I think it's cool because when Greg's talking about the games, he's really talking about the methodology, and he's saying like, hey, everybody expects it to go heavier. There's going to be this big, push for weightlifting and all that. And then you had mentioned, hey, he always talks about like capacity. And then when I brought it back to the pyramid, it was kind of cute because I don't even know if that's the hierarchy training pyramid behind him, but
blow it up.
It's it just reminded me of like, yeah, Greg wanted the games as like a proof of concept, like a solidifier that the methodology that is CrossFit is the superior training program.
Right.
And you could try to do whatever you want, and then you're going to come and compete in here. And if you're not, the people who are following the CrossFit methodology are going to be at the top of this event when it ends. Yeah. And so it was just that this video wow, this video is crazy. Like if you think about how much is like packed into this and how far back it was and what we know now, right?
It's the context with today as to how it all played out. And then I was just digging through old stuff and I saw him, and the same moment that jumped out at me is what jumped out at you. He's like, I don't want to be in that business. I'm going to keep it small. It's like, oh shit. Like the writing was actually on the wall way before as it was starting. And
Yep.
Greg probably is the only person that had the foresight back in 2007 when it started. And it's funny, I go back and I watch clips from the 2007 games, and there's not that many of them, but you try to find them. He's not overly stoked while he's there either. He's very like monotone. His face is very relaxed, even when he's shaking the champion's hands. And maybe that's just Greg. He's not getting overly excited, but like he's never pumped about like the way Dave is or others are. There's so many clips of Dave grinning ear to ear with excitement over pulling off the games that I heard a rumor was almost canceled in the first year. But just like it's never been Greg's forte, and he made it very clear here and continued to try to make it clear as people almost weren't listening to him, it seems like, and continuing to push and push, and he's going with it. And then he makes these big drastic cuts to media, drastic cuts to this, changes to the games. I don't want to support regionals. And we should have known that was going to happen if people were paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially too, like as it got further and further away from the business of CrossFit and the expenses went further and further up, I think Greg's messaging against the games got louder and louder, and the actions against it became more and more drastic, kind of like what you were just saying there. But yeah, this is crazy too, because, you know, it's such a interesting, because when they first talked about like the 2007, like the whole entire deal was just like, hey, there's all these people interacting in the comment section. Wouldn't it be cool if we could bring them all together and do a few workouts and like see these people with these awesome times like in real life, right? And like it just started as kind of like, and I remember Greg saying he wanted the Woodstock of fitness. Right. The Woodstock Festival of fitness. So there was a need for something to pull it from just on the, you know, comment sections in the CrossFit.com website to in person. But I think he already had the foreshadowing to see like, oh, wait a minute, this thing could grow so big and out of hand that it'll detract from the main thing that brought us here in the first place.
Exactly. And he knew it within 2 years of doing it. Like you said, I could have 50,000 people next year. And he was exactly right. He could literally sell out a soccer stadium next year with people who wanted to come. And he was not feeling it. And understandably so with his mission. But anyway, I thought that was super cool.
Great clip.
Augustus, how do you feel about some of the old journal videos no longer being accessible? Is that a fact, or is that because you're not able to find them? Because I can pull something up to show you really quick. If you want to go into the old journal, I do it frequently, and you can do it, but boy, have they massacred it. So if you want to stream through the old stuff, that's what it looks like.
No shit. How do you get to here?
I don't remember how I found it. I found it. I think I was searching for a specific old article, and I got a link to it. And then once I got the link, I could navigate back into this very broken old journal archive. But I can navigate through every. Let's see, where's the year drop down? There's a year and month drop down. Yeah. So you can navigate through everything. So I believe everything's still accessible. The issue is a lot of this stuff never made it to YouTube. So I actually download WAV files and watch old WAV files, and I have some clips. Some are worth watching, some are not, but I'm not going to try to stream with the WAV files. I don't even know what would happen if I did that. So, but yeah, as far as I know, everything is still there. You just need to be diligent about digging. Okay.
That's super interesting. I've had thoughts about trying to pull all of that stuff out and then having it live somewhere on a different platform that's more accessible and easier to access with some sort of message board. So that way, like you could have it all live there, and people that are like nerds about it, and especially the methodology and the business of CrossFit, could go there and like check it all out.
That would be sick. And I wonder how CrossFit would feel about you doing that. Yeah, they open, you have to download them. Most of them are downloadable only, Augustus. Yeah, I wonder if they would, is that like, what are the rules on that? Is that free? Can you just go take that stuff that essentially belongs to CrossFit in this archive and post it up somewhere else?
That is the question, right? And if on the show that I did with Greg, he still told me that he owns the IP of all of his stuff, right? So I think if Greg's name is on it, I think Greg is entitled to also ownership of that. And again, I don't know what this means. Like, so if I put it on a different platform, as I would assume that if I don't charge anything for it, right? Like if I'm just like, hey, it's free. Anybody can contribute. This is open source, comment, use it. I don't know what would happen. We'll find out.
You wouldn't want to get too far into that project and catch a cease and desist, though. That would be not fun.
Yeah, that would suck because it would just basically fold after that. It'd be a big waste of time. But
all right, let's see what we got next. I'm just kind of going a little bit randomly through these, look at some different stuff.
God, like his. Oh man.
Laying siege to the fitness industry in a storm of value creation, and it starts at the place that matters ultimately to all of us more than anywhere else: end user, customer, client. They are getting more fitness than they've ever gotten before, hands down. Anyone know of Gresham's law in economics? It says a good currency will chase out bad.
This is a really interesting concept.
Interesting phenomenon. I learned about this in The Economist years ago. There was during hyperinflation in Israel. It's like 100% a month inflation, several 100% a month inflation. They found that big part of the governmental costs of inflation was retooling coin-operated things like payphones. And so what they did was they came out with some currency, a floating currency that was stable to the cost of a phone call. And so that you might have to pay 1 shekel, 10 shekels, 100 shekels, 1,000 shekels to get one of these coins. Each time it was worth a phone call. You get a better deal off of the phone token than you would off the shekel because the currency was stable. Good currency will chase out bad.
Okay, so first, that's just a funny concept to think about. You could have literally taken all your money and invested in these tokens and had them be more valuable than your actual currency was worth when something like that's happening, which off topic, but a funny way to present the next part of this
lecture. Here's the thing: good fitness chases out bad. So you want to do something insidious to a little Globo gym. What you do is, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get one CrossFit trainer, and he's going to work over in a little corner, and he's going to teach people how to squat and deadlift and clean, and it's done. I guarantee you what the outcome will be. There will be one participant, then 2, then 4, then 6, and then people are going to come to the gym owner and, can we get rid of this fucking pec deck? I'd like to put in a squat rack here. Or we need a place to do pull-ups. There is none in this gym. And it will take over like a cancer on the prevailing model.
Okay, so while I agree with that from my own biased perspective, there's still a much, much larger fitness community, not really community, fitness people who go to the gym and they use these machines, or they use just the dumbbells, and they're more in the bodybuilding world, which is still significantly larger from what I can tell than CrossFit. And there are plenty of gyms like Lifetime Fitnesses and things like that now offer their own rip-off version of CrossFit classes. And I would imagine a lot of the trainers, not all, but a lot of them probably have CrossFit experience, level 1s, stuff like that these days. So while I agree with the notion, if you can get someone to bite and you can coach them for any length of time to give them the bug of, the CrossFit methodology, it's not as infectious to everybody as I would hope that it is, or at least the reach of what we're doing, HQ, is not reaching the fitness mass in the most positive way it possibly could, to convince them that all the bodybuilding shit you're doing on those machines, you might look good, but long term, there's no upside compared to what we're doing. Like, why is this not happening at the level that kind of he's suggesting that it should happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of you guys know some of my opinions. Number one, I think the media started to shift and showcase the games more than it showcased the methodology. And number two, I think in the more recent, CrossFit has moved away from building an army of people who are going to disseminate the messages, meaning the coaches, right? Like, we were some of the early first adopters, and like, you found this methodology, and the first thing your mind went to is, I'm going to cultivate a CrossFit Games athlete. You were like, no, I'm going to take this to police training.
Right.
Like, so now all of a sudden, if we have more of these coaches, right, that are disseminating the message more inside of these Globo gyms that are like changing the way that they're training, and you see those are the people that bring other people along with us.
But why aren't the trainers? Why aren't the trainers going from training at a Globo gym to saying, okay, like everyone knows that CrossFit exists, right? And maybe it's not. Maybe the stigma or the presentation of it is not grabbing the trainers the way that the NASM online cert is, or whatever other garbage you can get out there to get someone to do that. Like, why the level 1 to me was the most infectious educational thing I've ever been a part of, and it sucked me in, and to this day it's like my handbook to everything, right? And so like, why is that still not grabbing people? Like, So do you think it's just the disconnect of the media? We're not informing enough trainers or enough people that this is the route they should go?
100%. I think we see it within our own ecosystem, man. You could take somebody who found CrossFit, let's say 2 years ago, and their perception of what CrossFit is, and including the L1 and all those, that really great information that's in there, and they probably have extremely limited knowledge of that.
Yeah.
So like we have to treat the content, and we at CrossFit HQ has to treat the content, and we have to treat the message as if we're giving it to somebody brand new to the first time, not just speaking to the people who are already bought in, right? But how could we articulate that message to where it seems new and it seems novel each time? Now, if someone from the base heard it, they'd be like, yeah, dude, they're just talking about whatever lecture from the L1, right?
Yeah.
But to somebody new, they might be like, wow, I've never really heard people talk about starting with the nutrition and the metabolic conditioning pieces first. Like, that's interesting. They're like, wow, there is this pushback against, less processed carbohydrate in your diet and way more protein or something, So I think
where does that go though? Where does that go? Where does that media go specifically? Are you talking about more social media posts? You're talking about paid ads somewhere? You're talking about like a better YouTube channel that's not chopped up garbage like they're putting out these days? Like what? I can't even watch the new YouTube stuff. I won't ever.
Bad.
It's bad. And so like where does that info go to hook people?
Yes, I think so. I think all the information needs to go in terms of this deep education stuff on the actual website. Like make that the hub where you go there just like it was back in the day, and you had the workout of the day, and you had all these links that mostly drove either sales of certifications or information for you to go to learn more, right? Like if you remember the old .com, that's pretty much it. It was like your workout, the comment section, more information to get educated, inserts to go do it in person. Like boom, right in your face, right? And then with what you had said earlier, I think they need to be putting a camera in a ton of L1s. I think they need to be putting a camera on the L1 trainers. And I think that those two mixes would be a really strong start for their media. And then secondary to that, I think they should go into some of these CrossFit gyms that have been around for a long time, or coaches that have been around for a long time, and start to put a camera in their face. One story that I will tell real briefly, which was just a huge miss, is whether you love or you hate her, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Are you familiar with her at all?
I am. Yeah,
so
Found My Fitness.
On Rogan 10 times or something like that.
Probably
12 times. Okay. She spoke at the CrossFit for Health Summit. She is currently doing CrossFit with an L1 trainer that goes to her house since the Health Summit.
Is that your doing?
About that?
You know what's funny? So I heard your show where you were reviewing your time at the Health Summit, and I heard, the people who were kind of speaking about things that were a little bit out of context for what the Health Summit was, because they didn't really have the foundational understanding of what that was, right? And she was one of the names you brought up. And then I heard you mention that she was doing that. And then I happened to catch a clip where she was posting her workout, but she was not calling it CrossFit, but she was doing CrossFit. So anyway, continue.
So to me, that's a huge, huge problem that CrossFit didn't follow up with her, that we don't have some sort of media team that's with her coach, that's documenting her transformation and her getting the nuggets from the L1, and then turning that, using it in her own words, and disseminating out to her own audience. She has a huge audience. And now, can you imagine, let's say end of June, she's scheduled for Rogan. We don't know. CrossFit doesn't know, but we've had a cameraman person there, cameraman, camerawoman, whatever. We had somebody from media there documenting her thing. We've had a ton of stuff with her L1 trainer being like, yep, we've worked on this. This is where our mechanics that we're starting at. This is what we build consistency. By the way, this is the training that you'll get inside of a CrossFit gym, right? All that laid out. Rhonda Patrick collaborating with social media posts there, CrossFit putting up its own entities. The end of June, she goes on Rogan, and Rogan says, so what have you been up to?
Yeah. You just kind of nailed it. Wow. I mean,
easy. And now we're focusing on methodology and coaches.
So obvious. It really is that easy. And there's probably a lot of other people out there who, if given the opportunity to come to one of the summits or something like that, would have a similar story. There's probably all kinds of people who are extremely influential in the health and fitness space that would have other opportunities like that. And it's funny that you're talking earlier about putting more cameras in the L1s. If you could definitely do that, and I think they should. But if you want to or if they want to present them, the entire L1 is already filmed and chopped up on YouTube. Every segment of the L1 you can watch it like you're going to take it online. It's already out there. You can even get the handbook. The handbook's downloadable now, and I think it's free. Even if you don't sign up, there's 1,000 people you can reach out to that could email it to you. You could essentially get all that info. It's out there, but they're not, I guess it's money driven, that they don't want to make it super obvious that, you can get your L1 essentially by just watching it online. And I guess the experience is a whole nother thing. But if you just want the info, it's out there, but they're not showing it to you, like, obviously.
Yeah. And I guarantee you that everybody who engages with all that free stuff, I know I did. I do the L1 handbook quite a bit before I actually went into it, right? So you give all your best stuff away for free. And then all you have to do now is pay for the implementation. Cool. You know all of it. You have all of it. You're bought in. Now come do the course, get your certificate, start coaching at a CrossFit gym, or start coaching some of your neighbors, right?
And that was Greg's model, right? Give it all away for free, and then just sell the certificate later on for the experience.
Yep.
So cool. All right, let's keep rolling. See, the show, we could do, unfortunately, 2-hour-long shows, but I just can't have that. I just can't have that.
I've tried to reel it in. I'm having
You're doing great. You're doing great. All right. All right. So this is kind of part of the L1, actually. But I want your take on a specific function of the metabolic pathway. So
adaptation. First model.
And no one explains it as well as Greg.
There are 3 metabolic pathways, and don't get too hung up on this. If I put power on this axis and time on this one, there are 3 metabolic engines that drive all of human performance. Third is the oxidative or aerobic. And this pathway will only account for about 40% of max output, and that's probably being generous, and doesn't deteriorate, fade, or drop off in any reasonable time period. Goes for hours, in some instances days where needed. There's a dividing line here.
I don't know how he became such a good public speaker.
The relatively high output, this one's 70%. There's a dividing line between those that crash and burn and deliver high power, and the one that does not crash and burn is relatively low power. And that is that these are anaerobic, and this is aerobic.
Okay.
Now, it is our contention that he or she is fittest, that is best balanced, has the greatest total capacity in each of these 3 pathways. And critical to this program is our understanding and the formulation for which we've devised to get past the understanding that excessive time spent out in this pathway, the aerobic one, greatly blunts capacity in these other 2. Compromise once again.
All right, we'll stop there for a second. So one of the things I always found extremely interesting about the CrossFit methodology, this is basic exercise science, right? They teach this everywhere. Those 3 basic energy systems. The crossover between the 3 energy systems, I think, is far more complex, and I think Greg probably sees it too, but wouldn't bother trying to explain this to people. Far more complex than normal exercise science likes to present it. And I'll give you one example of that. So one of the things that jumps out at me and always has, and I can't believe that more people don't talk about this. Do you remember, I'm going to screw up the year, but I'm going to say like 2016, 17 Open, they had the chest to bar in snatches, where the snatch weight got heavier and heavier as you got through the chest to bar round. I don't remember the exact year or even the rep scheme, but I think it ended with like a 265 snatch for the guy, something crazy heavy. Yeah. And the heart rate of these athletes, like a 20-minute workout. Thank you, Corey. Yeah, 2017. Good guess by me. So the heart rate of these people, by the time they got to that last bar through those chest to bar, they're over 100 chest to bar deep, near max heart rate, and they come off with very little time left, no time to rest, and they're hitting snatch PRs, 10, 15, 20 pounds more than they've ever lifted in the heat of the moment at the end of this workout. And if you look at traditional energy systems, once you're past 90 seconds, your aerobic system has to start taking over, because essentially, the other two systems are supposed to have run their course for the most part. And it's very hard to recharge the other two systems while you're in an aerobic state. Yet somehow there's enough high-end energy left 20 minutes into a workout for a CrossFitter to hit over 100% output on a lift while their heart rate's at 190 beats per minute. How can you explain that?
Yeah. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. And so one thing, and I'm going to take a shot at this.
Go for it.
21-15-9. Okay. So that rep scheme, and it's been talked about quite a bit. But one thing that I did was interesting when I was really nerding out about programming, which is funny because a lot, like, I've hardly spoke like publicly about that. But when I was like deep into studying the open and all that stuff, one of the things that I noticed is like there's a certain time limits for ATP restoration, right? So it's like if you do something at a full max effort, as many pull-ups as you can, unbroken one set, and then you drop down from that, like how long, like what windows do you need for ATP to restore? So then you could jump back up there and let's say accomplish 80% of what you just did 100 pull-ups. Right. How long would it take that you have to rest so you could jump back up and do 80 unbroken, right? For easy math. And what I noticed is that if you were able to have about a 30-second window, which is the very shortest amount of time where you could actually say there was some sort of ATP restoration there.
Yep.
And then you jump back up on the bar, like how close can I get you to only a 20% difference from the first set to the second set, right? And then I really started to do that across 3 sets, a very detailed rest time of like exactly 30 seconds, exactly 45 seconds, exactly 1 minute. And the math turned out that when you have those shorter window of like the 30-second rest, it almost divvies up the math to where it's like a 21-15-9.
Wow.
And so
what
the question,
chances?
yeah. And so and you guys could try this, run the experiment at your gym, do a max effort set of unbroken keeping pull-ups or toes to bar, rest exactly 30 seconds, do the another set, rest 30 seconds, do a third set, take the numbers in between, calculate the percentage from each individual set, and then accumulative over the whole thing. And you'd be surprised at how much that kind of just adds up to like the 21-15-9 rep scheme of reduction in reps.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so when I did the math for the first time, I was like, holy shit, did Greg like figure this out and then use that rep scheme for the people to repeat and repeat and repeat to be able to do their sets faster, go a little bit longer, or start to reduce the rate of percentage fatigue between each set to each set?
Did you ever ask him that?
No. Honestly, I forgot about it until just right now.
Now it's going to be fresh on your mind.
Dude, I had a bunch of people run through those tests and to see. And so what I would actually do is
what other movements did you test? Sorry, what other movements did you test? Did you test weightlifting or anything like that? Because gymnastics is one thing, but when you're moving external load, there's a different power output that is required there, obviously. So I wonder how close it is there too.
Yeah, we only tested a couple of aerobic things with like an assault bike or a rower for a cal with a certain amount of output in the time, and then you rest a certain 30 seconds. But all of it was mostly done gymnastic skills. So handstand, push-up, toe to bar. Usually, then the idea there was that we were training muscle groups that tend to fail out a lot quicker, right? You know how it is with handstand push-ups. Like you go for that unbroken set and you might be dead for the rest of the workout singles. So that was the original thought, was like if we could tighten up some of the gymnastic skills. But it would be very interesting to try that in terms of weightlifting with a set number of or a set weight, right? Like 135 max effort back squats, rest 30 seconds, do it again, see how many you get, rest, and who knows.
Well, it's kind of, yeah, that would be really interesting. And it's kind of interesting the way they test stuff too, because in that workout that I brought up, 17.3, they sort of tested it where, well, I guess most times they test it where the weight's going up, right? Almost never is the weight going down and the reps going up. So it's sort of testing it a little bit backwards. But for some reason, CrossFitters, I would argue, are the only ones that have trained their energy system or that ATP to be able to recharge while they're deep in like zone 4 or 5 aerobic work, like to the point where they can barely say a word, yet in that 30-second window and sometimes less, they have enough recharge to be able to hit close to a max power output on a lift after that.
It's crazy.
So yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, and on paper too, like with a lot of the stuff, like that wouldn't seem possible. Like if you took some exercise science professor that's been studying this for 30 years and you're like, okay, here's the workout, here's the athlete, this is what we expect to happen. They're like, no, that's not happening, but yet here it is. So
yeah. And the fact that we have had this data and known this for coming up on 8-9 years. We've had all these incidents within testing in the sport that's happened, and nobody has been like, we need to research this greatly because it could actually affect the way we present energy systems. That's just people hating on CrossFit. That's people who can see the data that don't want to give it any sort of authority or any sort of legitimacy, that are just dismissing it as a fluke when it's not a fluke, because we repeat it tens of thousands of times all the time. So anyway, I just love this topic, and I love when people come into my gym and they want to talk to me. You know, maybe I'm going to sign up. This is what I did in the past, and they try nerding out with me about exercise science stuff, and I'm like, oh, you're talking to the right guy. Let's chat about it. And then they start telling me the way things are, and I start being like, I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back. I have the most fun with those people. Sometimes they don't sign up, but hey, sometimes
it happens, right?
All right, cool. We got a couple more. We'll keep it rolling. Awesome. Still got time?
Oh yeah. I'm good today.
Okay, cool. Today. Nice. I have a whole, I'm going to send you some clips of this old Savan video. We're not going to have time for it today, but maybe we revisit it later. It's freaking hilarious.
Awesome.
All right. I thought this one's just kind of interesting, sort of philosophical in ways.
Where is the blog? Is the blog, not the CrossFit blog per se, but just blogs in general, are they still driving strong? Are they still the cutting edge way of developing communities and interacting with the world, or is there something new on the horizon?
The blog with a natural, with the daily posting is a wonderful fit biologically, evolutionarily, I believe, socially, culturally, for a normal rhythm and cadence that is at the heart of all things human. The hour is a division of the day, the second a division of the hour, the year multiples of a day. Even the drama of the change of seasons pales compared to the drama of the sun rising and setting. People that seem to become successful at things stay committed to it over long periods of time through multiple of days. It kind of reminds me of the Alcoholics Anonymous one day at a time notion. You just stick at something every damn day, and 5 to 7 years later, you're tremendously successful, maybe to the limits of your genetic capacity and good fortune. But all these desk calendars, it's like constitutional law, 1 page at a day, history, 1 page at a day.
All right, we get the point there. So I just like, talking about the blog, and I guess the consistency of doing something all the time and not giving up on something, the consistency, the repetition, the whatever you want to call it, just like having that format for yourself ends up leading to success in so many other ways. And so it's funny, a symptom of like posting on a blog is just building good habits in something you do daily. You could attribute that to exercise. He attributes it to Alcohol Anonymous, like something that is, an addiction, really, really hard to get over, but one day at a time, you're doing these good habits, and these good habits lead to something down the road. And those sort of things remind me, over the years, I've had endless amount of gym owners reach out, or coaches reach out about hey, how do you, get a programming company off the ground? How do you keep your gym going? How do you do this? How do you do that? Because you've done it for so long. It's like, I just didn't give up. I've had plenty of bad days, bad weeks, and bad years. And along those times, I still had the habits, the same work, the same thing I was doing, just believing that it would turn around if I stuck with it. And I think that just is a good lesson in general.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I built the podcast too.
Right.
So yeah, right. At first it was like consistently, I remember us having a conversation with Sevan. He's like, okay, we're going to do it once a week. We'll find these cool guests. We'll post on this time. Something happened in the schedule. We had to do 2 shows in 1 week. We saw some result by going 2 shows in 1 week. So then that became the new norm. And within 1 month, which was hilarious, because I still remember standing in Sevan's living room and he's like, dude, me crazy. And I was like, what? And he's like, when we get up to 3 shows a week, and we're just boom, boom, boom. And I think within 2 weeks after that, it became a daily live show. And I love this saying, and I forget exactly where I heard it, but if you put in enough dedication, time, and consistency, at some point it becomes unreasonable that you will not succeed, right? With enough dedication, if you were hey, you know, and this is something that I struggle with, right? Because I got 3 kind of big things that take up a lot of my attention. And whenever I focus my attention on one, it really grows. The others start to suffer. And then I'll have to kind of like turn and point here, go, oh shit, the alarm's going off on this side, you know, like I gotta put more focus in on the gym. Where are my next leads coming from? What corporations are we having partnerships with so I could bring some of their employees in, right? And that just goes to that like same thing. Like you have to have that daily cadence to stay with it, to build anything worthwhile. And that was the ethos of, I mean, workout of the day. Every day there was a workout posted, right? Leif Edmondson, who posted and did majority of the programming for CrossFit.com for many, many, many years, and he was the main publisher there. He published something every single day.
I did not know he was programming.
Leif Edmondson probably programmed more on CrossFit.com than any other person outside of Greg.
I just learned something today. That's fantastic. Okay.
And the cool part about that was, of course, you know, I always dig the questions and I'm like, well, we always saw these little Easter eggs that got dropped. Like you would see a workout, you know, in January, and all of a sudden at the games, you'd be like, wait a minute, this was a .com workout or something like that. And Leif would say, yeah, there was a certain amount of continuity there where we would test something, or Dave would say, hey, can you fit this in? Or they would just be reaching into that and saying, hey, this did good. We have a little data. Let's repurpose it here. So you had some continuity between CrossFit.com. So that way, if you're at the peak of the sport, it paid you. You got rewarded for paying attention to what was happening on the website. Right. So Leif Edmondson was the main publisher. Great dude. And did a lot of the programming on .com.
Wow. That is a fun little nugget I did not know. Maybe I'll have to try to rope him into being on a show at some point.
Give it a try. I don't know if he's a fan of the public eye, but I could tell you, I've spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, but I've got to spend a decent amount of time with him on these different trips and you know, adventures that I've got to go on over the last 3 years. And he's definitely one of I just gravitate towards him. He's one of my favorite people to hang out with.
That's awesome. Wow, that's super cool to know. All right, we're gonna do one more real quick and then we'll wrap up. Try to keep it to 45 minutes. This one's just kind of a silly one.
Do the lifting shoes make any difference in how easy or hard a pistol is, a one-legged squat?
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd have to say it helps it. But lifting shoes, I mean, why?
Well, I had somebody said that maybe it wasn't going to be allowed at the games because it helped too much, and I thought that would be a good idea.
You know, I bet if you had trouble just getting one.
No, I haven't. I just do it with my regular shoes. I don't know. You told me to ask a question.
We'd have people at the L1 CERT show up with their lifting shoes. And Dave and I'd be like, we're going to put a run in this thing. We're changing it. And the guys are setting up. We're like, wait a minute, you know.
That's what I do during my warm-ups.
No, it's Frank, but there's going to be a run. Just to watch the transition, you know. Give you some of the complexify your world somewhat like a triathlete. Now I got to get off the fucking pull-up bar or off the lifting platform and get back into some workable shoes to run around the block. That's the problem there. Yeah, I wouldn't do lifting platform or shoes or belts or wraps or straps or any of that back down at ground level again. Wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, this is just like him saying, you know, if you want to cut corners around your mobility and your movement patterns and not chase down virtuosity, like go for it. But in the long run, it's not going to serve you. And that's just kind of what I get from that message from him. And it's put in a funny way. And he's even going to put a little dig back. If you put your lifting shoes on before you're warming up, he's not going to let you get away with it, sort of thing. I just thought it's funny because my mind goes to the same place as his. So.
Yeah, and I completely agree with it. I forget, maybe this was a Rudy Nielsen thing. Nelson, Outlaw Way?
Outlaw, yeah.
Where he said, like, I can't remember if it was him or if he ripped it off, but it was like you got $200 pair of shoes and a 10-cent squat.
Oh yeah, where did that come from? I've heard that so many times.
and it's a line that I've used again and again because, when people at the gym will ask like, hey, should I see some people with these weightlifting shoes? Should I get those? And they're very new into it. And I'm like, well, it depends. How often do you kind of sit at the bottom of your squat? How often are you really focusing on just dialing that in to where it's like solid? And they're like, well, never. And I'm like, well, save yourself some money. Spend the next month really focusing some time in the bottom of your squat, making sure that you're opening up your hips, doing all your stuff, really focusing on your lifts when you're in here at the gym. And I think you might end up, getting away with not having to get them. And it's funny too, because when I first started CrossFit, there was this picture of me and I looked like a caricature. I mean, I had like the wrist wraps, I had the knee wraps, I had the bright red Adidas lifters, like the belt on and shit. And it's funny because now, and probably for the last 7 years, the only thing that I use is a pair of gymnastic grips. That's it. No knee sleeve unless I'm like climbing a rope and it's around my ankle. No weightlifting shoes. Like for the longest time I worked out in Vans. Not great to run in. I do not recommend that, but yeah, that's it. No more knee sleeves, no more belts.
See, I thought that was a product of me getting old. And a lot of people, when they get old, they start using more equipment. But me, I'm like almost just too lazy to even have it with me. I'm like, I might have a pair of knee sleeves in my Jeep and I have like one pair of gymnastics grips somewhere. And if I can't do the workout, I'll just modify it so I don't need the equipment. And or I'll borrow someone's weight belt on a rare time I go for a 1 rep max. But yeah, I don't even own a pair of lifting shoes. I just do what I can with my own movement. And I just feel like I don't know. Maybe that's just me being lazy, or maybe that's just what I've grown up from everything else that I just don't need. I'm not training for anything other than my own health and fitness. Are you training for anything?
Nope. That's it. Just to make sure that when I go and, train all these firefighters and stuff, I could still keep up and beat them in most of these workouts that I issue out to them. That's it. You know what I mean?
Just throw one little trick in there and you can beat them. One little movement that they can't do.
Right.
And then no matter what,
25-foot handstand walk at the end of this. Why is that there?
They might all get to the handstand walk before you, but you'll walk past them.
But I'm gonna walk. Yep.
Totally.
And to that point too, with like getting older, things like that, like I'll have members that'll ask about like, hey, a knee sleeve, we're going heavy on the back squat today. And I'll say, well, why do you feel that you need it? Oh, my knees had just felt a little off last time we squatted. Then my immediate next thing is like, well, hey, why don't you just reduce the weight? And I like to use the phrase like barbell yoga. And I'm like, hey, why don't we just go at like 50% of what you're planning to go today? You give me a 3-count tempo down. You give me a 2-count pause at the bottom. And then you come up at normal speed. And let's just do a couple reps of that and really dial everything in, rather than putting some sort of Band-Aid to kind of mask an issue. And then going, okay, well, I've strapped the knee in the back end. Now let's slap all the weight on there and go heavy. It's like there's probably some sort of mechanical dysfunction that's causing you to need that in the first place. Like, let's address that. Let's slow it down. Let's rebuild our foundation of the squat. And then we'll start to build the back up in the weight. And chances are, if you do that, you'll get stronger, you'll be healthier, you'll be less injured and less in pain. And you probably won't even need all this stuff at the end anyways.
Totally agree. That's my go-to tool, as well as the tempo for the majority of people who keep stacking weight. It's like, this will actually be harder than you trying to push moving like shit through this heavy weight. Try to do this 1 rep across 5 seconds. Like, good luck.
Yes, so, exactly. Time under tension is so undervalued, especially in CrossFit.
Totally. Cool. We're going to wrap there. Thank you so much for coming on. That was a blast. I'm going to make this a semi-regular thing. There's endless amounts of Greg videos out there. So I'll have a volume 2 and a volume 3, maybe every 6 weeks or something like that, if you want to come back on.
Amazing. Yeah, dude, I have a blast on the show and talking about all that with you. So anytime, dude, if I'm available, I'm down.
Much appreciated. All right, guys. Thanks for watching today. It was a ton of fun. I'll be back Friday. I think JR Howell's coming on Friday.
Oh, such a treat. He wiped the floor with me last weekend when I was at his gym. We did all partner workouts together.
Oh, really? You were his partner?
You've voluntold him coming up. Hey, will you work it out? Yeah, I'm gonna do noon. Cool, we'll be partners. And it was like, then from that on, it was that ever since. And that he's fit, dude.
Dude. Yeah. I can tell. So anyway, Friday we'll have a show. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later.